All right. Good evening, everyone, directors, staff, members of the public joining us in person and those watching online. It is 6:30 and I will call this November 21st, 2024 regular business meeting of the Twin Cities German Immersion School to order. To start, we always reflect on our mission, vision, and values. The mission of the Twin Cities German Immersion School is the innovative education of the whole child through German immersion. Our vision is Andra Fern, Andra Zayn, Velthofen, Dinkin, and Hanlon, educating multilingual world citizens who hear others, see others, and think and act with an open mind. Hi. Our values are curiosity, kindness, challenge and support, intercultural engagement, and community. We also share our land acknowledgement at the beginning of each board meeting, and so I'll read that now. We acknowledge and appreciate that TCGIS is located on Wakapute Dakota traditional, ancestral, and contemporary homeland near Lake Minnewatka in the land now known as Minnesota Mokoche. Our presence here is linked to generations of Wakapute stewardship over their land, as well as to the historical and ongoing injustices of settler colonization that impact Indigenous people to the present day. We are committed to understanding our role in this legacy and to educating ourselves and our community about Indigenous history through continued mindfulness and engagement in and outside of the classroom. Harry, probably take the roll for the record, please.
Yes. Director Reich,
Here.
Director Smaka,
Here.
Director Lindner,
Here.
Director Height,
Here.
Director Albers,
Here.
Director Larson,
Here.
Director Yemaniab,
Here.
Director Miller,
Yep.
And Director Tesfayesus.
I believe he's on his way.
Okay. An ex officio member and executive director Elizabeth Ziempennig.
Here. All right, thank you. We have a quorum. Before we begin tonight, I just wanted to extend a special welcome to Danielle Miller, who's here as our program manager with the University of St. Thomas, which is TCGIS's authorizer. Just as a reminder, every charter school in Minnesota must have an authorizer. And the role of the authorizer is to work with schools to ensure that we are operating soundly, both academically and operationally. And each year, authorizers visit their schools in their portfolio. Danielle was here tonight to wrap up her annual visit to TCGIS, the majority of which occurred on November 4th. So as part of that visit, she spent a day here at TCGIS meeting with administrators, teachers, parents, and students, and also observing classes. And earlier this evening, she met with some of our members of our board and is joining us tonight just to finish completing her observation. So thanks for being here, Danielle. Also joining us this evening, our TCGIS's Director of Special Education, Tammy Saul. She's joining us online. Welcome, Tammy. And Lead Special Education Coordinator, Andrew Haugen, who's here in person. So thank you both for being here tonight to present on our special education program. And with that, we'll move on to our agenda for the evening. Our first order of business for tonight is to approve September's meeting minutes. I'll ask for a motion to approve September's minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion or updates that need to be made to our minutes from, I should say, October, not September?
We know what you meant.
Thanks. Appreciate that. All right, hearing no discussion, the October minutes are approved. Our next order of business is a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda. So moved. Thank you, Director Smaka. Second. Second. Thank you, Director Albers. Any discussion or additions to tonight's agenda? All right, hearing none, the agenda for this evening is approved. Next, we do have a chance for an open forum. The school board recognizes the value of participation by the public in deliberations and decisions on tonight's school district matters. To maintain orderly and efficient proceedings, the school board provides a specified time and regular business meetings during which members of the public attending in person may address the school board. Do we have anyone here tonight who has signed in to address the board? Right. Hearing none, then we will close our open forum for the evening. All righty. I think our next item on the agenda then is our special recognition.
I can get started while Kevin brings that up. The first group that we are recognizing tonight are the parents that helped put on the PTO Halloween event here at the school. If you haven't been this year or in previous years, it's a lot of fun and it's a great way for families to come in and celebrate Halloween while getting a chance to get inside the school and for the community to come together. I'll read off all these names rather quickly. My apologies if I butcher your name or if you are not included on this list. I did not put it together. No, at least one person is missing because my name's not on there. But
Your wife said.
my wife did. But I assure you I did just as much as her. So thanks to Charles Price, Jesse Manger, Candace Davis, extra special thanks to Candace Davis and the rest of the PTO that put it on, Amy Marga, Gabriel Sveen, Jonathan Nisley, Jared Yogurts, Catherine Radicke, Elizabeth Zanefinig, Michael Bradford, David Burris, Kelsey Ward, Lydia Garber, Anja Rubenstein, Michelle Vincent, Teresa Sanislow, Julie Alcatute, Hoyt Dreyer, Amanda Ramirez, Lupe Dominguez Gonzalez, Diana Irwin, the GAI, Emily Ruggles Johnson, and the GAI, Jenna Vallejo, Jesse Hyde, got that name right.
And Richard.
Allison Zugschwert, and the Girl Scouts here at TCGIS, and Jennifer Roos. So thank you all for putting booths up at the Halloween event. It would not be an event without the parent volunteers.
Our second recognition for the night goes to the organization team and the brave souls who ventured out with 3 sections of 4th graders alone
Into the woods.
and into the wilds, yes, Osprey Wilds field trip, and brought them actually all back. So as a parent of a 4th grader, I absolutely appreciate that. So thank you very much to Valerie Hartley, Tobias Schupp, Andrew Lubin, Catherine Radecki, Nina Maslavsky, and Nancy Striegel. Brave souls. Thank you.
All right. I think we'll hear more about that during the director's report as well.
Yeah, and we have one more, the third recognition. And this is about a fall leaf ranking. With the fundraiser of the athletic department, which was organized by Chris Tarbich and Stacy Flanging. So special thanks to them, but also a very big thank you to all of the volunteers, students, teachers, friends, and parents, without whom the fundraiser could not have taken place. So a big thank you to all of you. Good job. Very important too. I forgot. Around $2,800.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, worries.
That's
So
awesome.
big success.
Yeah.
My daughter participated in it one of the days, so I dropped her off and it ran very, very well. They did a very good job. It's a really cool fundraiser. I hope it sticks around. So thanks a lot, Chris and Stacy, for putting that on.
Do we have any satisfied customers?
We got a lot of nice emails.
Yes, I was a satisfied customer.
Oh, you're telling people now?
I won't say where.
Yeah,
It's in Como.
it's in Como.
That's as far as I'm going.
Perfect. So
So
we
it was a
can.
masterful plan and they raked all the leaves and nobody had to deal with my dog, so.
Awesome. I think that leaves Martinstag, right? All right. Just a huge shout out to everybody who helped organize our annual Martinstag event. Some of them are here with us today, so thank you for being here. It was a fantastic evening last Friday. It's one of my favorite TCGIS traditions as a parent. And it was technically our last year, but I'll be back, I'm sure, just to participate. But it was a fantastic event, as always, a huge crowd. So thank you to all the parents and kids who came. And especially thanks to all the staff who helped make it possible. Amy Lundberg for the amazing lanterns. I don't know how she does it every year, all the lanterns, but they're fantastic. Andy Nessett for organizing the gym, Krista Johnson for organizing the band, Herbert for organizing the choir, Amy Peterschmidt for the drama, Suzanne Hall for the second grade singers, Nina Mamkowski for overseeing the whole thing, Paige for all of the wonderful communications and preparations, Heidi Schultz for the book sale, Claudia Mueller for the wonderful Capstone Cafe, and all the volunteers that helped to sell an amazing amount of baked goods. I got a text after the event, and I think something more than like $3,000 between the brats from Gerhardt's and the bake sale. So a huge success overall in that capacity as well. So thank you for making this special school tradition possible. It's a wonderful gathering of our community. So hats off to them. Give them a little. All righty. I think that concludes our special recognition. So we will ask Andrew and Tammy to start us off with their presentation tonight. We'll give Kevin a second to get all the Zoom stuff working.
Which one comes first?
Andrews.
Okay.
It does?
For
Okay.
for the agenda, it does. And then we can let him.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for letting me address the board here today with an update on the special education department and what has been going on so far this school year. I have on the slideshow and going next, but that's fine. I'll skip ahead. Kevin, if you want to hit a couple of back one.
Oh, back one.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go through everybody, but this is just an example of our team here at TCGS. We have a very large group of licensed staff members and educational assistants who are supporting our students on IEPs. We have a wide variety of expertise in a number of different areas, and yeah, it's almost over 20 some staff members here in the special education team who are helping to support our students. Do you want to move ahead one? So staffing changes from last year. Over the summer, we had 2 special education teachers depart, a psychology intern. That is an annual position, so that is expected. And we had 6 educational assistants leave, 3 of them whom are now teachers at TCGIS. So as far as like finding quality people who want to, become a part of our community, that's very exciting to welcome those into those positions. 2 EAs left TCGIS, and 1 unfortunately passed away at the end of last year, Maya Davies. Hired this year, we were able to hire 3 special education teachers, one of whom came from Berlin, Nadine Szymanowski, and she's been wonderful. We have a new psychology intern from UW River Falls, Connor Bourne, and then we've been able to hire 5 educational assistants as well. Right now, we are still actively hiring 4 educational assistants and a behavior specialist, and or special education teacher to help support our case management and behavior response. Sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense to hire a full-time position because just the number of students served, and so maybe there's a situation where we just need one person for a short amount of time. In those cases, we contract. And so this is a list of all of the services that we contract for to, again, support our students on IEPs and deliver special education services and support our team. Yeah, so We have created a couple of new spaces within the building this year. We, down here, just across the hall is the beanbag room, I think is what it's going by right now, but it's effectively a sensory room down here for our third and fourth graders. There is a sensory room, a couple of different sensory spaces upstairs, but this is one that is nearby, so students don't have to travel so far when they need to take a break. We also have upstairs the elementary resource room, which is getting quite a lot of use this year. That's a very exciting new development that we didn't have. But again, it's a space where students can go to meet with their case manager or to have some time to work in a quiet space. So that's really nice. And all the other spaces that we have as well that are staffed and available for students to access. On the left there is an example of our an estimated child count for this school year. Right now, estimating about 63 for December 1st, which yeah, is accurate enough. And you can see it's a little low compared to where we'd like to be. We graduated a pretty large class last year and have not yet backfilled or like identified in some ways like some younger students. So we are a little low with our child count numbers, but we are actively, in that child find process, looking at identifying students who might have additional needs for special education services. In the middle column, primary disability categories kind of gives you a sense of the range of student disability categories that our students at TCGS fall into. Apologies for the SPED acronyms there, but speech language impairments make up most of the largest population of students on IEPs. So our speech language pathologist, Leslie Lehman, has a caseload of 22, and specific learning disabilities, other health impairments, which include ADHD, autism spectrum disorders, kind of round out the next three, and then emotional behavior disorders. We have a few students that fit in that category. The rest of the students are in more low incidence disabilities like deaf, hard of hearing, and developmental delay. And then in the far right column there, you see most of our students are federal setting 1, which means that they spend 20% or less of their school day outside of the general education setting. Because of the German immersion mission of our school, we really do take quite a bit of effort to lean into inclusion and having our students in the classroom as much as possible. So they are getting that access to German language instruction. We do have a couple of students who do need to spend a little bit more time outside of the general education classroom, but that's relatively rare. And as of right now, we do not have any students who spend more than 61% of their school day in a special education setting. Extended school year is something that we offer every July. This year, I was here along with a special education case manager and educational assistant. And extended school year is different than summer school. It is a service that is provided to students who meet certain eligibility criteria. And so we had 4 students here this summer who received that instruction over those 12 days in July. And that is an eligibility that we are constantly reviewing. Our case managers are collecting data throughout the school year to determine a lot in their IEP teams whether or not students qualify for extended school year. Special Ed Advisory Council is up and running this year. We've already had a couple of meetings, but that is a place where community members can join us, and Director Albers and myself, in just voicing concerns about things that are going on, or expressing some ideas that they might have for ways that things that they would like to see implemented. The meetings are typically an hour long, and we've moved exclusively to Zoom this year. And so those can be found on the TCGIS calendar. So anyone, and also emails are sent out in the room brief, or excuse me. So, yeah, welcome. Anyone is welcome to join the Special Education Advisory Council if they are interested in learning more about what is happening within our department. The sensory friendly back to school night that we had this year in August came out of that committee last year, and I was really pleased with how that went and the general feedback that we've had to that, and I look forward to continuing to grow and improve on that for families who have students who just need a slightly different experience on when getting back into the school year. We've also spent some time talking about just general updates for the department, ideas for outreach events. We had some very early e-learning days this year, so trying to iron out some of the things that came with having an e-learning day on the second day of school. And then one of the biggest issues this year so far has to do with some compensatory education. We had some delays with special ed case manager licenses. And so we just are looking at ways that we can make up some of those service minutes from the first few weeks of school. But yeah, it's been very good discussions in the Special Ed Advisory Council. So looking forward for the department, professional development needs. We are working on a new math curriculum. We're using Zern to help support some of our students with some remedial intervention and skills development. We are also training our teachers in literacy for the READ Act. So they are taking I don't know what OLA.
Oral language and assessment.
Literacies as something, yeah, but we call it OLA around here, but it's a year-long professional development that all of our special education teachers. The READ Act is mandated by the Department of Education. And so our special education teachers are learning the science of reading, like how people learn how to read. And so it's not a curriculum, it is just the science of reading. Very cool that they're getting to do that. We also had a couple of different training days for verbal de-escalation and CPI in the fall. We'll look to do it again in February for some staff that may have missed out in August or have been onboarded since. And then just general restorative practices and learning repairing harm when it is done, and giving our case managers and staff some training in that. We're also looking at, as always, service delivery models. How does special education fit neatly into the mission of the school? How can we continue to support students at their level of need while also balancing the community's desire for German immersion and for experience in the general education classroom to the greatest extent possible? Like how do we make that work for all types of learners? So just really struggling with and challenging ourselves with service delivery. How do we lean into innovative education? Child find, I mentioned earlier, our numbers are a little bit low. We have fewer numbers in elementary than we do in middle school, and it has to do with sort of like this post-pandemic situation that we found ourselves in, of just like how identifying what is a typical struggle, what is a unique struggle, and where does that disability exist. And so our elementary numbers are just generally lower than middle school. So how are we identifying those students in elementary who are needing our support? Ongoing staffing needs. It's always a challenge to find staff members to work in special education. So we're actively recruiting all the time. And then highly qualified educational assistants. This is all educational assistants are required to be considered highly qualified, which is they have to have a certain number of post-secondary credits. And if they don't, then they need to pass some sort of like a certification exams. And so how do we find high quality educational assistants and get them the training that they need so that they are able to work with our students. Is that the end? Okay, so then that's what I've got, and I can throw it at Tammy and then do questions for both of us after. Is that the deal? Okay, so Tammy, take it away. Everything that I did.
Hi. Sounds good. Thanks for having me. In your board packet, you received information from me on how we're preparing for the upcoming monitoring that the Minnesota Department of Education will do. And I thought it would just be beneficial for you to have an overview of how the Minnesota Department of Ed ensures that schools are compliant with both state and federal regulations as relates to special education. So the first method is that MDE evaluates through a structured process called program monitoring. And that's what I have outlined in here for you as a part of the program monitoring. There's both annual activities, which include things like reviewing for disproportionality in special ed. They do this by reviewing some of the data that we submit through the state systems. And then annually, they also randomly select and ask us to review some due process paperwork. We might have to submit an evaluation, for example, and see if it met timelines, if it met all the requirements within that evaluation process. So from an annual perspective, TCGIS has not had any systemic issues or significant findings. I did kind of a 5-year look back and didn't find anything that was alarming or concerning to me, and probably things that I just see in most of the schools that I serve. There also has been no identified disproportionate representation of any population of special ed within your school. So those are good things. The information that's in this handout is a part of a broader monitoring. Every school in Minnesota is assigned to a cohort. And within that cohort, the school is, they go through like a pre-screening to see if you fall into a high, low, or mid-risk. And depending on your risk assessment, MDE determines how deep of a dive they're going to do. So last year I did a pretty thorough review of your information, and then I also continued that this year. And, based on my review and communication with MDE, I think you'll likely fall into the low risk category. And what that means is MDE would do what's called a topical review, and they'll just ask us to review things ourselves and submit through a system that they use called Stepwell. So it's all really good news. Schools always have things that they can work on, but I think with TCGIS, I see a lot of good systemic work being done for program improvement. And then the second thing that the Minnesota Department of Education looks at beyond program monitoring is more of that due process stuff. MDE also will look at your fiscal compliance within special education. And so with this, they really don't put us into a cohort and assign us. Instead, what they do is annually, they're looking at fiscal compliance. And they do this by monitoring things like maintenance of effort. Do you continue to spend at the same threshold? What's your procurement or your purchasing process look like? They may ask us to submit time and effort reports or things like that. But the annual, it goes on every year, the fiscal monitoring, and it's a little more random. They will do a deeper dive this year, and they're also going to use a risk assessment. Similar to what they do for program monitoring. However, we have not received any information yet on where TCGI is at for that deeper dive into the fiscal monitoring. But again, just like program monitoring, I've been reviewing some of your data and your information, and I don't see anything alarming or that would tell me that we would be in a high risk for our fiscal monitoring. I would say that TCGIS works with a very reputable agency for its fiscal management, and they really help us stay on top of things when it comes to that grant management or that special ed finance component. So just in closing, I would share that TCGIS has been really proactive and is really well prepared for all of the monitoring processes. The staff that I work with just continually demonstrate the ability to provide high quality special education services while maintaining some of the compliance with the federal and state requirements. So I'm very confident that these proactive efforts are going to help us through that monitoring. And most importantly, all of that is looked at to just make sure students are getting what they need in special education. And, I'm happy to say that TCGIS does a really nice job of serving students and putting students first in everything they do. So thank you again for having me, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Right. Thank you to both Andrew and Tammy for your presentations. Do people have questions?
I got a couple. Tammy, what timeline-wise, when will we know what level of scrutiny we will be exposed to by the NDE?
Yeah, so great question. So you're due to have comprehensive review next school year. I have already had some preliminary conversations with MDE, and that's why I'm pretty confident that you would be in that low risk category. You drew a lucky straw because the monitor that you have for program monitoring, she's very experienced with charter schools. And she's also very familiar with TCGIS. So we've already had some preliminary conversations. I suspect it'll be low risk. In terms of when you'll get the notification, I would say probably after the first part of the year, the new year, we should expect something. But I would be surprised if it was anything different than what I've shared with you.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, question for you. You mentioned the licensure issues. Have those been resolved? Are licenses granted?
Oh, yeah, they were resolved around fall break in October.
Okay, good.
So the next step is just to have conversations within IEP meetings about the minutes that may have been missed, and the IEP team, whether or not they determine that additional compensatory education is necessary. Students continue to receive instruction throughout. It was just a matter of the license of the person providing it, right? So yes, all of that is resolved. What still remains in effect is the IEP process to determine compensatory service minutes, which has been resolved for some, but not all.
I do have a comment to, as a parent of a student with an IEP for a long time at the school. I can echo what Tammy said about the execution of our special education services at TCGIS compared to St. Paul School District or Anoka Hennepin School District. I talk to a lot of parents that have, or my wife talks to a lot of parents and I hear about it, that have special education needs in Minnesota and around the country. And I can only echo that my wife always carries the torch for TCGIS and how great of a job we are collectively doing to help kids with special needs succeed in school. So just because we're in it all day, it's like hard to see outside our own boundaries. So I want to bring this outside perspective in. And as a parent, I want to say thank you. As a board member, I say good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I had a couple questions as well.
Okay.
So, to Tammy, your assessment, I don't know, you may have said this already, but has your assessment included interviews with families of, special education kids? And does your interview match your assessment? And then I have a follow-up question to that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I have not done any interviews with families yet. I've engaged with families at TCGIS, but haven't done any sort of formal survey or interviews. Looking forward, I know you probably received communication from Elizabeth that talks about a program review that we're going to do. And that does include surveys with parents and communicating with parents to get input into our special education program as well. And then when the Department of Education does do monitoring for you next year, they likely will also reach out to some random parents, either through survey format or direct contact with parents. They typically do that, and we'll find out more about that when we get that official letter.
And so my other question is, so I have to indicate that really I do not know extensively about this, but I would like to ask, are there ways to assess in your work whether this assessment you've done ensures that no special education kid or any steps are done that no special education kid is not fully served? So essentially, how do we ensure that, okay, we're serving many of them well, but we're not, how do we ensure that we're trying to make sure we're serving all of them well?
Yeah, and TCGIS has a full-time on-site lead special education coordinator, which is Andrew. And so he handles the day-to-day, making sure that all the special education IEPs are shared with the teachers, communication, monitoring the compliance around some of that. So Andrew, I don't know if you want to share how you work to make sure that those IEPs are being followed.
Yeah, I mean, we share IEPs with teachers at the beginning of the year, and then they get new copies of those IEPs after the IEP teams have met. They are shared with those teachers. When we just onboarded a new staff member a few weeks ago, and the special education team met with that new staff member a couple of times to share IEPs with them. The IEP team will continue to review and monitor. We, as a special education department, we have weekly meetings where we are reviewing student paperwork and process to make sure that we are in compliance. We also have redundancies, right? We have ways of making sure that we are, if I miss something, I have somebody who's able to catch something that I have missed, and so on, right? So, and Tammy is able to catch things that I have missed, or Elizabeth does, right? So we have ways of accountability built in, and yeah, I feel pretty confident that we are doing what we need to do from a legal standpoint.
So I think, well, I will indicate that I think many students, probably special education students, are probably being well served, but there have been a couple of cases where this was not the case. And I think we may be probably, we may have a good standing from a legal perspective, but it does not mean much to the families that are not being served well. This may be the best there is out there, but I think I want to make sure that we recognize there are a couple of families. There are a few families that, TCJs could be doing better for. I know a family that left the school because they were not very confident about this.
I have a question. For the pre-open positions currently, how are those needs being filled in the meantime?
Yeah, excellent question. So for our, we have contracted out special education teachers, licensed special education teachers who are supporting our staff remotely with paperwork and helping with some coaching. We also have people who are coming in and helping us with our evaluations. And so we have found licensed staff members who maybe aren't able to give us 5 days a week and be in the building, but we have reached out and found some contracted license support. We also use Zen Educate as a short and long-term substitute position for our educational assistant positions. And so through Zen Educate, we have found some long-term educational assistants as a sort of stopgap until we are able to hire educational assistants to CCGIS. Last year we hired 2 educational assistants. We bought their contract from Zen because they enjoyed our school, and now actually both of them are teachers. So and they came to us through Zen, and we have a couple of people right now that we've had for quite a while on that platform. So yeah, all the positions are filled, right? We consider them vacancies because if we can hire into those positions, we will.
Sure.
But at the moment, yes, we are actively hiring and recruiting.
Is there generally a shortage of special education professionals across the Twin Cities schools?
There's a shortage of educators in general. And if your algorithm on your phone is the same as mine, every time you open it, it'll tell you about special education. It's in the most dire situation of all of the positions as far as public education. The fact that we are as staffed as well as we are, I think, is a testament to our school. I wanted to address Director Tesfayosis. We have exit interview data on families that leave, and I'm just kind of scrolling through the last year. We do have one family from last year. Dissatisfaction with special education is one of the options to check. Nobody has checked that this year, so I do encourage that if directors have personal connections to other families, to connect them maybe to me, to do an exit interview. I'd love to hear more. As of right now, we don't have any indication that anyone has left this year for special education reasons. A couple of other reasons, but that's part of why we want to do the program review, is to find out a little bit more. There hasn't been one as long as I've been here. This is my 5th year. We've had our special education leadership in place. Tammy, this is her 3rd school year. Andrew's starting his 3rd school year, although it wasn't complete. And we're all in-house now. We are not contracting out our leadership in-house. Andrew is a TCGS employee, so it's a really great opportunity to take a look at what the community is wanting, what the community is needing, and whether needs are being met.
Thank you for that. I had one other. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question on the early intervention services. In Tammy's report, there's a couple references to our child percentages in the SPED program and how they're lower. And there's references to our early intervention services program possibly being a reason for that. I'm curious if there are numbers around how many. Well, first, my assumption is that the CEIS is outside of SPED, or is it a part of it?
CEIS.
Yeah.
CEIS is a grant that the state has to hopefully have kids that not end up in special education.
Yeah. So the children served within that are outside of SPED. So I'm just curious if we could get numbers on how many students we are serving through that grant, just to kind of compare that to the gap between our SPED services and the state averages, to kind of, instead of just taking that as a possibility, it'd be great to get some numbers around it and kind of prove or disprove that, especially as a part of the, this deep dive into the SPED program.
I did just fill out the grant application end of year report for the CIS grant, and we chose 10 students last year to focus interventions on. And of those 10, 3 ended up on IEPs. but 7 didn't.
Yeah, and I guess that's exactly the numbers I would want. I want to like know a percentage, student percentage, how many students are in that program, how many students that are served by that program end up in SPED and or don't,
Yeah.
and kind of use those percentages compared to these. So, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you or sit down with you at a different time after this to look through those or help find them. I know you guys got a lot to do already. I'm happy to find information that I want.
But that is part of what our program review is going to look at, right?
Okay.
Because, or at least in part, right?
One part of it, yeah.
One part of it, because, yeah, we fully admit, like, it is a unique challenge that we have at the German immersion school to determine, is it a disability? Is it just a difficulty learning a second language or a third language in some cases? Like, what is the challenge here, and how do we parse that out? And so, yeah, we might in some cases be overly cautious, but we also really lean heavily on our intervention programs and comparing apples to apples, right? Like, it is hard to look at national and state norms when they don't deal with the same challenges that we do. So we tend to look at our own longitudinal data. We tend to look at a lot of other data points.
Yeah, and I just want to know, I in no way am saying that that's not a possibility, or I don't believe that is the answer. I just, if there's real data that could be had there to pair along with this to prove that, that would be a great part to include in this.
We're asking the same questions.
Oh,
So, like,
that's
I think
great.
it'll be, interesting to find out.
I would just add that TCGIS does really have a robust intervention process. In addition to CEIS, they apply for ADSIS dollars, which is another pot of funding that supports early intervention. And then kind of the third bucket, I would say, is the multi-tiered systems of support. Those three are not, I work in a number of schools. I've been a director of special education for almost 15 years in traditional schools and charter schools. And I would say TCGIS, in my experience, has one of the more robust systems that I've seen in place. So what we want to do is there's not a target with the child find. There's no percentage that we need to hit, but it's a way for us to monitor where we at compared to other schools. And we always want to make sure we're not under identifying and we're not over identifying. So it's really a science of trying to make sure that whatever we're doing is working to catch the kids who need it the most and provide them those services.
Yeah, and maybe that's data that would come from a bigger group than just SPED. Just as we're not directors of the SPED department, we're directors of the whole school. So when I see these numbers, I want to see the CEIS numbers. I want to see the ADSIS numbers paired alongside it to kind of draw a picture of how we're serving all children in the school. So thank you very much, though.
I just had one quick question that maybe builds off of kind of what Richard's getting at with some of the supports that are school-wide. And I know in the past, there's been some real successes with integrating, like occupational therapy approaches for classes that were struggling or things like that. And I'm just wondering if there are any things like that you guys feel like are really good wins, or things in the past that have been successful that have been able to be replicated to serve a broader student population. I just recall that the one, I think it was like a first grade class, maybe last year, 2 years ago, where they really put in some like breathing stations and things like that, that really helped make a difference in terms of behaviors that the teachers were seeing. So just wondering if there's any wins like that you'd like to share.
Yeah, so we've got the sensory room, like we've got the one up by the library. We've got that in place since last year. And like we mentioned, we have one down here now. And classrooms are implementing calming corners. There are visuals for breathing exercises and things that can be done. So there's lots of things that are happening. We're plenty of professional development for the whole staff. Several members of our team have given some really great professional development sessions on mental health and like ADHD or autism, and there have been some great trainings and information that has been provided. maybe I'm tired, but I don't know.
No, that's great. I think that-
Our occupational therapist set up the stations in the
Mhm.
sensory space and
Yep.
then taught everyone how to use that. And that's something that's what that grant was for.
Mhm.
And it's still in place today. And we've expanded it now to downstairs. And it's high in function with some of our kiddos
Right.
these days. So I think that might be what you're talking about.
Yeah, and just some of the, I know in the past 2, you guys have talked about some of the professional development that you've done, so things like
Yeah.
that are reaching a broader, taking those techniques that your team is experts in and sharing them more broadly to help support all students too. So, yeah.
Yeah, because we are present at those data meetings and the school-wide support team meetings, and so we are always there to offer, support and consult as we can.
Any other questions on?
Yes. So, Tommy is a professional and I see no reason to question everything that she says. So instead, I think maybe the problem might be where, if there is one, or where there can be improvement, where the rubber meets the road. So, for example, there are many interventions that the program is undertaking. Are there ways to assess how well these interventions are going? One I'm thinking of namely is training teachers to de-escalate. Is there any metric that's taken to see how well that's working? How much it is helping? And then similarly to all the other interventions that are being done. Because clearly, the preparation, the program organization is good. But there are some things, not everybody's served well, like I said, not all of them. So
there will always be differences between people learning a new technique, teachers. So while everybody gets the same education, it really depends on the teacher, in my opinion, how they execute it. So there will always be differences. So we can't always say, hey, everything is going to be 100% peachy. The question I would have to the family, or in general, since you brought it up, is what was their expectation about special education? Because we also need to be realistic from the parent perspective. As we know, our community, some parents have really high expectations and then are disappointed, but then find out going into public school that they're going to be really disappointed about the services there. So it's like, I would love to hear more because I have a different experience. Just grilling him right now doesn't solve it.
alternatively, I think what can be done is if some of the interventions, because of some teachers, are not well done, resources can be directed to that. I wonder if we can say, not everything is going to be 100%, we have to accept it. I think we can, okay, something is working well, great. This is not working well, let's redirect resources. I wonder if this can be done.
Yeah, I mean, we do collect behavior data on a daily basis.
On students or teachers?
On students, and so we are able to see like where students have the highest level of need, where the successes are, where additional training and support might be necessary. But that is something that I'm pretty proud of, the fact that we do collect that data, we lean into it, and data is data, right? Like it is important to analyze and also and recognize that, like I think Jens is saying, there's just a multitude of factors that sometimes are hard to account for when we're looking at certain data. It's hard to capture the whole picture, and so we do what we can, and I can't say that we do everything perfectly, but I can say that we do it earnestly and with the best of intentions and with the highest integrity we can.
Oh, I have no doubt about that, and absolutely, that is not what is in question here. And having spoken, I can't. So, are we assessing what is working well and what is not working well?
I think
that's what the program review is
Yeah.
targeting. That's coming up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Find that out.
Does it review how well an intervention is working? If yes, then my question is answered.
I think I have a different answer though, too, that might be at what you're getting at is, I don't know how familiar you are with individualized education plans, IEPs. Andrew lives in that world, and so I can be a translator for those that don't. And on those are goals for each student, call it 5 or 6 goals. Those goals have to be SMART, they have to be measurable. And there's data taken on those goals at different midpoints throughout the year and then reevaluated. And then if the goal is achieved, we go on to a new goal. And so if there's a student who has a dysregulation disorder or is struggling with an emotional behavioral diagnosis, of which there were only 4 out of 62, those goals are written in. The paraprofessionals are trained to work on those specific goals or to take data on the goals. And yes, those are all assessed.
I think we're assuming here that the delivery point, the teachers don't make mistakes. I'm just asking, do we assess that?
Well, we evaluate our teachers in teacher evaluation per Minnesota state statute.
So I don't know much about APs.
Just trying to educate.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I think so. And then I understand there is time to think, but there is IEPs that are very well developed, and then they're being deployed. And we don't know how they're reaching the students.
We do.
We do. That's kind of what those goals do. Is assess the
But
need.
we're assessing the student there is very well.
Do you want to just talk about case management? Maybe that's the.
Law to follow the IEP. So they follow it.
Perfect. What happens if you don't follow?
As a parent, you get mad and then you yell at the school.
So
I mean,
As a principal,
I
you
don't know of any
that.
teacher who doesn't follow IEPs.
You're held accountable for it.
Yeah, you're held-
You
yeah,
do
you're
it,
held
because otherwise every grade that otherwise you have for that kid
That
doesn't
is-
really count because it's not valuable. If you
So-
haven't followed protocol.
what do we do to measure that?
Well, so it's an individualized educational program. So the data collection, the measures that are taken are individual. So it depends on the goal that is being measured, the services that are being provided. And without getting too deep into it, right? The IEP team is a group that involves parents, the students, the case manager themselves, a district representative, who's an admin member. So all of those people are there and they are looking at the goals and they're looking at the services. And if an IEP is not working for a student, it's not there's a whole team there to say, here's what we need to change, or here's what how we want to react to the student need. And you continue to reevaluate as necessary. There's frequent progress monitoring that happens throughout the school year. And so there are multiple opportunities to say the student is making adequate progress or they're not making adequate progress. And so if we follow the IEP process and we are sincere about making sure that students are learning and that they are achieving their goals and that our case managers and our teachers have the resources that they need, we are confident that it will work, right? And if it is not working, it's not necessarily the teacher's fault, it's not the student's fault. It is just we need as a team need to find a different curriculum, a different training, a different set of resources, a different accommodation or approach, right? So that sort of feedback is happening constantly because it is a team approach. That is how we ensure we are not discriminating against a protected class of citizens.
Excellent.
Just a quick follow-up. Will we get a chance as a board to get the results and review with you guys of the program review?
For sure.
And then when do you think that will be? Is that like
Tammy,
a
do you have a
year?
timeline on that?
I know the company that you're using to do the program review is going to put together a timeline. So they just got notification this week that you wanted to move forward. And so step 1 is to get you a timeline. So And that would go to Elizabeth and Andrew and I, and then we could maybe share that out, Elizabeth, on that timeline. But I would anticipate, I would see early spring. A month or two for them to kind of gather the data, summarize, do the interviews, those kinds of things would be my guess that we'll see something February, March-ish.
Give an update at the January board meeting, and they know Uptick is the company that we're using. They know that we'd like to use, that the board would like to use this as a tool for the next strategic plan. So they're aware of that timeline need.
Okay. And then just one more quick question from me. Sorry. Earlier in your presentation, you made a note about our numbers in elementary are lower. And you weren't sure if that was like after COVID effect or, I found that interesting because are elementary numbers higher usually? Is that why you said it that way?
No, no.
Or is there like a target?
Yeah, and it's maybe irresponsible to speculate, right? Because
Okay.
I don't know. It's just a hypothesis. But you would expect, right, that disability doesn't really, it doesn't favor one grade level over
Right.
another. It doesn't favor, like, it's independent of grade level. So you would sort of expect an even distribution, all things considered, right? And that is not currently what we're looking at.
Okay.
Right? So then it's up to me, sort of as the leading this department, to like, why is that? And and try and figure out what is causing that to be, and then work to address it. And so that's my current operating hypothesis, but who knows, right?
Okay.
And so we just continue to meet with our element, all of our grade level teams, but especially our elementary ones, and identify those students who might need additional support, and work with the families to see if they are interested in moving forward with a special education evaluation and so on.
Okay. It'll be interesting to compare like statewide data of what were the effects of COVID and that whole mess we were in to, has the numbers ticked up since then or not? And how does our school compare? And just because we are not the same doesn't mean it's bad or good, right? It's every cohort is slightly different.
There's certainly been more ADHD diagnoses since the
Okay.
pandemic.
Interesting.
Yeah, Tammy would have a better view of Minnesota. It's a larger picture than I do.
Yeah, the statewide trend after COVID is we are seeing increasing special education needs throughout the state. There's no doubt about that. I would say when I look at TCGIS, I'm going to go back to, I don't know that COVID has kept kids out of special ed for you. Usually what we see is COVID increases the needs that we're seeing because kids weren't in school and those kinds of things. I think, again, I'm going to go back to the intervention process that you have in special education before we evaluate a student. The law requires that we try evidence-based interventions first because you don't want to label a child as having a disability. So we want to make sure that they're in their gen ed environment. And again, I'm just going to reiterate that TCGIS does an amazing job of looking at evidence-based interventions, collecting data, and making sure that students are first being served in that general education environment. And so I think that might be why some of your elementary numbers are lower if we were to compare that to other schools. I think that, again, as we go through this program review, that's one of the questions we have for the evaluators is tell us about our child find, because it really comes down to processes, procedures, and systems of support that we have. And so that's one of the questions we've asked them is to dig into that a little bit more for us and tell us why are we lower? And it could be that we're just doing a great job with interventions and it's keeping kids in gen ed. It could be that we're missing some kids and we need to improve some processes. Right now, we don't know, right? Andrew's speculating, I'm speculating. And so hopefully at the end of that, we'll have a better idea of what's going on and if we need to make some process procedure improvements.
Thank you.
Right. Oh, you guys have adequately fulfilled your time, but thank you very much for being here to share more about special ed. We really appreciate the work that you're doing to support our students and our families, and really appreciate you taking the extra time on a Thursday night to come to one of our board meetings. So
I told Tammy 25 minutes. My bad, Tammy.
Okay, this is great discussion, and I'm happy to, if you have parents, that are reaching out to you directly, we don't know unless they reach out to us. So I echo what Elizabeth said. I'd be happy to dig in further, but in a public forum, we probably shouldn't use names or talk about individual situations. So I'm happy to share information. So
we appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right.
Thanks, Tammy.
All right. That brings us to our director's report.
Great. Yeah, great. We'll start with some staffing updates. We with the departure of Thomas Vico, our Phi Ed teacher, we found Tony Bachman. He started a couple weeks ago and is fitting in nicely. For Kinder Club, we've got a couple of new people, and interesting to point out is that we keep getting TCJS grads of the class of 22. Yeah, and so there's a couple of names there that are familiar. In-house subs, we have Kat Krantz, who has been helping. She is also a parent in the community. And then Linda Zimmerman joined us as an in-house sub. And so one thing that I've noticed about staffing is that a couple years ago, or just coming out of the pandemic, subs were really hard to find and we were really struggling. And we're not having that struggle these days. I haven't subbed for Phi Ed once this year. So we are making some improvements. Financial indicators as of 10/31, we had 72 days cash on hand. The enrolled ADM at the time that Kelly was working was 560. You'll see on the next page that we're actually at 561. You'll see we are actually at 560 now. But we did revise the budget with Kelly. So we had been working off of 611 up until the last month. And so we're now working off the 564 budget. Our debt service credit coverage ratio is at 1.1 projected at the end of the year, and then fund balance of 27.4%. That is with an ADM though of 575. So we'll continue to monitor that. The next slide is current enrollment slide. We are at 560. We lost a 5th grader. The next slide shows current applications. I'm gonna start to use a different slide. This graph here, Nicole Crashell has made this. We're gonna start looking at it monthly as well. So you can see the green line is the last school year, and then the orange line at the very bottom is our current applications. And you can see that we've started receiving applications earlier this year. We played around with our timeline and we already have 44 applications in for the year. So that's great. Continuing to figure out what our best plan is for marketing here, and reminding us that word of mouth just continues to be the #1 way that school or that families are hearing about TCGIS. We are working with Charter Connect, who is our current marketing firm, on updating our website, because that is also a really big chunk. And interestingly enough, the first thing that they suggested was most schools, when you open up their page, they have students, and TCGIS has a building. We were really proud of that building, right? It's beautiful. It was a baby that was birthed that year, but we are going to change that out and put students. So some exciting things happening on our website.
That's great feedback.
Yeah, next slide, please.
Yes.
Just some straight operational updates. The roofing with Les Jones is in progress. Andy's working with them. They are going to be taking a core sample, which is going to give us a better idea of what the roof estimate will be down the line when we have to redo the roof. Currently it's coming in at 220,000 estimate. This roofing repair should get us 3 to 5 more years on our roof. The sport court painting, Andy painted on November 1st. It was a PD day and it got a little cold towards the end, so he didn't get to finish, but he does feel really confident that he's going to be able to do that. He's going to let it sit over the winter and see how it responds. You know, if it's gone by spring, then we probably need to do something different, but he feels really confident that we can save a bunch of money by him doing it himself. He's also slated to have a sandbox made on Monday. There is a fencing situation they told me about, so we'll see if he decides to do the sandbox in March. I'll let everybody know. We rented to Mighty in the weekends in November, and Mighty's, I can't remember what Mighty stands for, but they do math with little kids, and they had 10 of our classrooms, loved our facility, and they're coming back for summer, so it's been a great revenue for us. Speaking of revenue, the clothesbin has arrived. If you haven't seen it, it's beautiful. It's right out on the Como side. And so if you have things that you would like to drop off, clothing that will get recycled or sent off to somewhere else, you get 7 cents on the pound. We also are renting our gym for futsal. It's happening as we speak, and another $1,000 in revenue. We did reach out to Charter Source, who is the company that we got Karen cleansing from, and also we do our board training with. And we are going to get some human resources temp work as needed with the impending departure of our director of operations, Kim Hackett, who is still currently pregnant.
Did you say temporary departure?
Yeah.
Or impending departure? I don't know what I said.
Impending temporary.
It's an impending temporary departure. She's coming back. Yeah.
Did you tell the roofing people to take the core sample from above Emily's room?
I didn't talk to the people, but I'm sure Andy did.
He asked me if it was warm enough in my room yesterday, and I said, "Oh yeah, no heat is great." I appreciate that, 62, and I'm not being sarcastic.
Next slide, please. So in meeting with facilities, that would be just Andy and Kim and I, also the campus planning committee, looking at some campus planning spreadsheets that were had and just kind of doing a general looking around myself. I've identified some capital improvements that I think need to happen and can happen. And so the first thing that I set to work on was some signage for the parking lot. If you've heard me talk about this, you've gotten into TCGIS unless your GPS tells you. And so we're working on a sign. Andy is actually going to do 2 more comps because he feels like we can do better. So by spring, we will have a sign. Roof repairs are coming in at 9,100. John Steingraber has found two different companies to look at our HVAC plan and give us a basically itemized list of the things that we would need, or kind of talk to us about our options. And that was the lowest bid seemed just fine at $6,000. And then we spoke with Christine and her design firm about what we could do to both have continuity within the 3 different buildings of our school, and also signage, thinking about brand placement, thinking about recruitment and having people on tours in our building and things like that. I was really impressed with her. I've decided to go with her over her bid included some pro bono work, which came to a tune of $14,000. And then I've thrown in a little extra here for some of that signage that I think will be part of the first phase, including out on Como, something over there. And then the campus planning has been working on the playground, phase 3 of the playground, kind of just seeing that to completion, getting rid of the older structure, which has been deemed unsafe, and replacing that with something more sustainable is the last amount there. And it's kind of come in at a couple different prices. I just chose the lowest one. I've looked at the buckets that we have for revenue. I did not include this slide, but I could, how would I do that right now? Share it with Kevin? Share
Yeah,
my
maybe.
screen?
If you can share your
I
screen,
can also talk about it.
I have it up as
I
well
think it would probably be easier to share it.
to share it.
Mhm.
Do you think that you could send it over to Kevin?
Yeah.
I'll set it up if you send it over. We met with Kelly Ripla, who is our accountant through creative planning, and after the audit, really got a handle of what the numbers are that we're talking about. When the playground was proposed last spring, the numbers were still sort of in an estimate form. And so we kind of cleaned up what those buckets are. Most of the a large chunk of the playground was coming from the Fund 4 fund, which is community ed, which is our kinder club revenue. And that was estimated to be about $100,000. We actually have more like 120. And Kelly, our accountant, recommends just cashing that whole thing out because that fund can only be used for certain things. And the playground is like literally the best thing that we could use it for, considering it is a community playground and a community fund. And so she recommends closing that guy out. That will help us get that extra 20,000. And then our capital fund balance is sitting at 468,000 by the end of the year. We're putting $33,000 a year in lease. Wait, no.
Slide
Yeah.
4, Kevin.
I'm doing okay. I have these numbers almost in
You
my head.
almost
I
memorized,
know.
yeah.
Pretty.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been a lot of iterations.
It's been a lot, yeah. Okay, so these are the numbers of where we're at. Our fund balance estimated at the end of this year will be 2,465,000 and change. And that's that 27.4% that I just mentioned. We had approved $100,000 to come out of that. I'm actually going to recommend that we not touch that fund balance, that we keep that fund balance as is. Embedded in that fund balance is the $500,000 employee retention credit. Still not sure about that. I don't feel comfortable relinquishing it. Just want to sit tight on that. Taking even just a little bit out really makes that number go down to a number I'm not super comfortable with. The fund balance at 25% is also listed in case you're wondering. It doesn't take too much for it to go down. The capital improvement fund, however, is at 468,000, which is higher than was estimated last year in spring when the playground was originally proposed. And we did talk about taking 2,500 from that. I'm going to recommend that we take the 100,000 that was recommended the first from the fund balance from that capital improvement fund. For anybody that needs an image on how, like what that fund is for, I liken it to if you have a mortgage on a home and you want to redo your bathroom, take a second mortgage out on your home, but the value of your home is increasing. And so you sort of stay even Steven, not necessarily in a liquid status, but you're putting an investment into your home with the new bathroom. In this scenario, the playground is our bathroom. So to pull that out, it's really just a transfer. Our values of everything still stay the same. The ABC cash account, there was some money recommended to, there was nothing, we're going to keep that the same. Capital campaign, that is money that's already been allocated. PTO donation has already been allocated. And then you can see that I'm going to recommend that we take 20,000 more from the Fund 4. And that's how we are getting to the additional 82,000. Basically, what I'm saying is we can do all of those things that I think our school needs. We needed the roof repair. I believe we can step forward with the design thing. We don't have to pay for all these phases of design this year. We can just kind of see where we're at and get things moving. Let's do the HVAC thing so we can figure out what we need. And then let's see the playground through. And then call it good on that. And I think we can do all of that. And all of those things do not take away money from students' supplies, from curriculum, from teachers' salaries. You know, this doesn't mean we can't pay our teachers more. All of those buckets are very, very different. This capital budget is for things like this, is to maintain our building. I really see our building needs in 3 bubbles. One is maintaining the building. Part of it's pretty old. One of it is increasing the recruitability through our building, the playground, the atrium, things like that. And then the third,
Future,
shoot, what is the third one?
HVAC, future.
The future, correct. Yes, thank you. Yeah, we're taking a look at what we need, the roof, the HVAC, things like that. Okay, so then I think you can go back to the others, unless anyone has questions on this.
I have,
Yes,
so if I,
Director Lindner.
so if I understand this correctly, nothing comes out of our current operational budget, right?
Correct,
And we're not touching our fund balance,
correct,
and we're using money we already have
correct.
that is slated for capital improvements, which
These are,
playground is one.
correct.
I will make one slight correction. We will be touching the fund balance, but not the general fund balance, just the capital improvement
Got it.
fund and Fund 4.
Yeah, but the capital improvement fund is not part of the DSCR, right?
Correct.
It will not change the DSCR.
Well, yeah, will change cash on hand, but it won't affect the DSCR because it is a capital spend.
Why didn't we do this in the first place? Just curious.
Do what?
Why didn't we just do this from the start? What changed? I might have missed it. You said it.
No, I don't know. I wasn't here.
The original numbers, if you'll see, the second row fund balance at 25%, that originally said 20%. So the previous iteration of this looked like we had a lot more cash that we wanted to spend out of the general fund, so it wasn't really questioned. However, Elizabeth and I and the finance committee have talked about how we want our target to be 25%, even though our policy reads 20%, and 20% is even higher than what we are contractually obligated to, like with bondholders and state requirements and everything is still lower than 20%. But
I think it's protecting the ERC money.
yeah, that's a big part of it too. Yeah. So,
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
so that number used to read 800,000.
Okay.
So nobody really questioned it. Now that it reads 300,000 because we're trying to stick to a 25% fund balance,
Okay,
we want to make sure we're taking it out of the right bucket.
okay.
Or the short answer is just an oversight and we're correcting it now.
That works too.
So these are the recommendations. Harry Eberhard, if you could go back to that slide that has that one. These are the recommendations that I would propose to the board for consideration.
And in light of your recommendation, I would make a motion to a 3-part motion, move the $100,000 already planned spending it from the capital fund or spend to the capital fund instead of from the general fund. I have notes on this. I'll send you, Kevin.
No one's ready this down.
Part 2 would be to spend an additional 65. I'm going to go to 65,000 because the 41,000 for the playground is the swing, which I strongly would like to see. But we'll see what happens. The other option is the track ride, and that is about $2,800 more. So that would need to be that number would need to be 44,000. Just so we'll go to 85 total. So sorry. Second part is spend an additional 65,000 for the campus improvement plan, which is this, and spend another 20,000 from Fund 4 to get to the 85 for the campus improvement plan.
Tricked me.
I tricked you. That was my whole plan.
Is there a second? Thank you, Dr. Larson. Discussion?
Before we just start discussion, we thoroughly went over this at the last finance meeting, and the finance committee unanimously agreed to recommend to the board that we spend this additional $85,000 on capital improvements to both do some small projects that are well needed to finish up the playground and have that be completed. And the roof repairs and HVAC plan are things that, well, the roof is something we need now. And the HVAC plan will help a lot for the campus planning committee to plan the future spending.
Future needs of the building.
Yes.
I agree. I feel like much more comfortable taking all of this out of capital. I like the idea of keeping our fund balance closer to 25. And I think that all of these suggestions are very strategic in terms of what we both need and what will help our school continue to recruit and retain our students and families. So appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I know there's been many conversations, both in the finance committee, planning, campus planning, and at committee of the whole. So appreciate everyone's diligence. Any other comments for discussion?
Makes sense to me.
All right. Would you like to take a vote? And move to
No, that's
All right, so I will make a motion then to approve Director Hyde's recommendation. His three-part recommendation of reallocating the 100,000. What was it, 65 for the immediate?
65 from the
From the-
additional 65 from the capital fund.
For a total of $85,000.
Yes.
As broken out on the slide above. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Buildings has me. Oh, there's more. I'm not done. Okay.
Nope, keep going.
Couple of recruitment updates. This is the graph that I said that we're going to start to look at how many applications we are getting per month. The orange column is this year. It is so much smaller because it was taken halfway through the month. You know, I needed to have it prepared a couple days ago. So the other months are the entire month of November. So we're definitely on track. We've been working through Minnesota Department of Education's kindergarten transition plan, which has been really helpful in how we think about recruitment and how we think about retaining our kindergarten families. And one suggestion from that was to just do a larger tour night, kind of think about open house like they do at the high schools. And we're going to do a little mini open house. It's going to be January 29th. There's a kindergarten play date that was just offered recently. We're planning the 100 days of kindergarten. We currently are working on our application being in Spanish and getting ready for a Minneapolis event. We've got some Spanish speakers planned to be at those. So lots of good things cooking in the recruitment area. Recruitment and outreach events last month. We sent Paige to the Twin Cities Book Fest. The Tilden Park Harvest Festival, Dock and Paddle Trick or Treat was the same day as ours. Look at that great picture. That's Paige as a cowgirl. And then Scott Meyer, our new office worker. They had a great time. And then Paige went to the College in the Schools Field Day, which is always exciting for TCJS to be represented there. And then it's a great spot to get those high school kids who are, you know, they're our future, that they're going to school for German. They need to know that we exist. Future events on the horizon. So we've got some weekly tours that we've started. Of course, the GAI had their Lanternenfest already. There's a kindergarten school fair at the University of Minnesota. I had a great conversation with a family at the BIPOC Friendsgiving last Saturday. They're a family from Germany, and the dad was choosing schools to do his PhD, and he chose the University of Minnesota because of our school.
Wow.
So the University of Minnesota needs to know that, because they got a great candidate and we got a great family. And so when she was there, actually, I think the date is wrong, because she is coming up. She's going to actually talk to admissions. Some other things that this weekend is a Kinderstube Perspective family event. And we're still seeking if anybody wants to join us.
No, that's full. Abner
That
and I
is
are
full,
going.
right? This is old.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. And then the Minneapolis School Fair Finder, that's the one that we are getting our application in Spanish for. And we've got some bilingual folks that are gonna join us.
I'm not bilingual, so I'm not going to be the first one to volunteer. I did do the Minneapolis School Finder Fair last year, and it was a very cool event. So I would recommend anybody, especially anybody that speaks Spanish, to volunteer for that. It was a very fulfilling experience.
Heidi Schultz, our media specialist this year, who is a Spanish speaker, spent last year living in Colombia. She has volunteered to be there, so
Awesome.
super excited. Charter Connect is chunking along. We've got our enrollment and ad spend data here with some data. This is an example of a meta ad with no building but kids. And so they've been really a delight to work with. They sent us really cool things like a video of them talking through this stuff. Saved me 30 minutes on a meeting, right? I don't need to do that. I can just watch this 2-minute video to hear how great they are. And the most recent awesome thing was we were really worried that PAC class wasn't going to work with our system. And Nicole Crashell, who is one of the most thoughtful people I've ever worked with, found a workaround, brought it to them, and I think it's going to work. So we should be able to be using PACT class soon, which is great. And for a reminder, that's the enrollment software that helps us grab people when they start filling out applications and then maybe step away, helps us grab them and be able to reach out with a nudge.
Is that picture with kids on the new playground?
That's the old
That's
one.
the old one.
That's the old one.
It's okay.
At least there's kids. We'll get there. Although that's a really good idea.
That is a really good idea. I have a great picture of some directors on.
Oh, you are not allowed. A picture of me going down the slide on the website.
Homepage.
You can go ahead to the next slide, Kevin. This is super exciting. We've had on our list of milestones from the strategic plan to offer enhanced field trips. And Osprey Wilds was an addition this year that is likely going to stick around. So our 4th grade teachers, Andrew Lubin, Valerie Hartley, and Tobias Schupp saw this, had this vision of creating this experience, which is very much akin to what German 3rd and 4th graders experience as well. This typical Klassenfahrt, where they are overnighting for a couple of nights and just gaining some independence and learning responsibility. Obviously, this scaffolds us when we have kids doing things like this for Waldsee, which is longer, and then for Capstone, which is the longest. So our 4th grade students had 3 days at Osprey Wilds, which is just 90 minutes north of the city, close, just in case, of experiential outside learning. Topics included animal signs. There are pictures of the people there dressed as owls and slugs, some orienteering. I hear a lot about the archery. They were just outside in nature. That was the day that it snowed. They came back on Halloween when it snowed. And yeah, beautiful building, great facility, something that we will keep in our program. Valerie did such a great job. She actually got a reduced cost and we've booked it for next year already. And I think it ended up being like about $120 a person, which isn't too bad. We didn't let anybody go based on financial reasons. So everybody that wanted to went, and it was really great. Whole child updates. Waldsee is getting ready for their 6th grade program. They had their first meeting. 7th grade families had their first meeting for Capstone. So we're starting to do all of that planning. Power Up groups are back. If you have a middle schooler, ask them what their Power Up group was. It's great conversation. The 3rd annual bullying survey went out, and Catherine Radicke and Nina Maslowski are busy digging through that data. And I will probably present on that. Actually, I'm going to invite Catherine to come present on that. She's listening in January. We've got really good historical data now on classes, but then also we have noticed that there are certain years, like 6th grade, this stuff happens in 6th grade, and then it gets worked out by 8th grade. So really helps us with our SEL curriculum. We had the first middle school dance, thanks to DJ Matthew and DJ Joshua. Athletics wrapped up their fall season, and then we talked about that leaf raking campaign. Innovative education, you heard Andrew Hogan talk about the READ Act. That training began for phase 1 teachers. The state has given us who needs to be trained and in what phases they need to. We are ahead of the game. We had to offer it, and all of our teachers then, most of our teachers are doing it. There were a couple that just said they're going to do it next year. It's an online module. We made extra time on PD days because it is quite a lot of work. We acknowledge that. We talked about doing an IXL software pilot. That was probably when I talked at committee of the whole. We've actually purchased it. Logins are being made for students. Esther Noy has an entire rollout plan for both elementary school and middle school. And basically what IXL does is it's a diagnostic. You sign in, you do a couple of problems, it finds where you are, and then it maps out where you need to be and then provides a program. Right now, we're deciding how we're going to use it. Is it a 15 minutes a day? Is it we do this on Thursday and we're going to get teacher input before we make any big decisions on that?
Is that for all grades?
3 through 8, because you need a Chromebook. Correct. English language arts curriculum review has started. Catherine Radicke is going to be heading that up. She's busy making some rubrics and things to bring to teachers to get more input on. Dr. Kat went again to the MINSTA. Actually, I think Katrin Gilhoff went as well. They both went to continue working on the next gen science standards. History Day began. Teacher PLCs are underway with a math goal this year. The last 3 years we've had reading goals. This year and the next 2 years we'll have math goals. Last slide, our German immersion, saving the best for last. Professor Juliana Schicker was back for part 2 of German immersion PDs. The teachers have a resounding love for this woman. She comes and she's just like one of them, right? And so they just connect on this meta level. She'll be back again for, I think in February. We had our first Grundschulversammlung, which is what this picture is of. This is when everyone was gathering to sing Der Herbst ist da, fall is here. Big bummer news, Dr. Amy Young got swooped up by Minneapolis Public Schools and is not my immersion concept helper anymore. Although I did get her personal phone number and she said we could still be friends and she would still help. Ernesto Valles is our new guy from MDE. So he and I have met once and he is familiarizing himself and he's going to get back to me. I met with St. Paul Public Schools to extend our memorandum of understanding about our kids that go to Central, and that will be renewed for another 5 years. So it ends at the end of the school year. I met with Janae's last name from the enrollment portion of SPPS, and she will reach out with a new contract that we will then sign and continue our long relationship with Central.
Are the number of slots staying the same?
The number of slots are staying the same because that is the number of a class. They will guarantee one class. If the number is larger, they, as long as you get in by the enrollment deadline, we're good. But they cannot guarantee things after that enrollment deadline. And last year our numbers actually went down. It was 36 or something. And so they did not see any reason to raise it. Let's see. We talked about the Lantern first meeting for Capstone. Task forces are meeting next week. So I will report out on those in January. What questions do you have?
Dr. Lindner.
Questions. When will the roof repairs be done and the estimate be done? Just timeline there. And for the Osprey Wilds, you mentioned that we already booked next year's. What are your thoughts? How this could be improved / experience within the 4th grade?
The roof repairs, I haven't talked to Andy. He was hunting and then today he had a thing. And so I was supposed to get an update. I'll have to bring that back to you. I'm not quite sure. I'm pretty sure they're done though, because they were already here.
Okay.
And so I don't know about the core sample. As far as the the second question at Osprey Wilds, I did meet with the 3 teachers when they got back, and they had a lot of feedback and a lot of really great ideas. And they booked it for the same time of year, and I think that was one of the questions that we had. We wondered if that is a good time or if it would be in fact more fun to do it in spring and then invite 5th grade teachers and have it be sort of like a celebration of finishing off elementary school, entering middle school, a chance to meet with those new teachers and do, I think that might be kind of fun too. So most of the feedback was just how can we optimize?
Oh, it sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, I think 3 days was about long enough though. Yep.
Any other questions for Director Zenfini? Yeah, thank you.
very
That was
good.
very robust.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Alrighty, that brings us to our recess. We are slightly behind our schedule, so I would make a motion to adjust our recess to from 8:10 to 8:20, and we'll reconvene at 8:20.
So move.
All right. Excellent. We will recess for 10 minutes and be back at 8:20. Here my go. Alrighty, it is 8:22, and I'll call this board meeting of the Twin Cities German Immersion School back to order. The next item on our agenda is board committee reports. And I think we get to kick off with Whimsy and fundraising during our week of giving. So how fitting. Hopefully you all got your text message on your phone while we've been here.
Yeah, so our last meeting was just all about the week of giving and planning for it. And per the update today, we are at what, 37,000?
I haven't checked.
I think, yep, $35,731, which is great.
Plus another 10.
Plus another 10. And yeah, last week at Martin's Tag, Kristen took the lead, and I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
Yeah, I will say it was really fun to be able to share some of the impact that our annual fund has with all the parents and families in attendance at Martinstag. We had a wonderful turnout, like I mentioned before, and I'll give a big shout out to Isabel for joining me and helping to invite families to participate in our annual fund campaign this fall. We announced our goal of 85,000 and broke it down to share that if every household at TCGIS gave $200 between now and the end of the year, we'd meet that goal and fully fund our intern program, which, as we all know, is a really cost-effective way for us to provide extra educators in our school buildings. So I think there's been a lot of good momentum going, and hopefully we'll keep it up. And we did also announce at that event that we did receive the $10,000 grant from the Hall Foundation out of Atlanta, Georgia, for our intern program, which was a pretty big thing because they don't typically grant outside of Georgia. So I'll give another shout out to Katrin Gilhoff for helping us find that opportunity. So lots of good things underway. And I'll say a special thank you to everyone here who contributed to the board match. That was a huge success, and we met that match very quickly. So thank you to all of the directors for helping put that together. Right. Dr. Hyde, finance and facilities. Actually, just finance.
Most of the finance meeting was spent talking about the campus planning spend and the playground. So our recommendation for that was a majority of the meeting. We also looked at enrollment, and the financials were reviewed as normal. Elizabeth went over most of those in the director's report. The other thing we did was get an update on switching banks. That's still in process. So we're monitoring that. Thank you to Elizabeth for keeping that moving, and Kelly. Yeah, so unless there's any questions.
What is the update on the bank move?
We were waiting for paperwork. That I did see a response on now.
Yeah, we were waiting for Craig Hepler to
That's-
do something and he,
There was a response, and I think he responded. And now it's in Kelly's hands. Basically just getting all the bond, we have to change the bond paperwork because it lists Bremer. So we just need to get their approval, and that's what Craig's working on. Getting their approval and changing those documents to reflect the new bank. And then we'll actually be able to start the move. That's the last thing.
Excellent. All right, committee of the whole, obviously, we were all there, but spent a good chunk of the time talking about plans for finding a vendor to help us with our strategic planning. We have two really strong front-running candidates that we are reaching out to in the weeks ahead to present to ask them to present a proposal to us. So appreciate the work that Dr. Albers and Dr. Zimmerman have done on that. We are also spent some time just reviewing the phase 3 program playground funding requests and making sure that obviously we were all understanding what was being requested, and obviously that went well tonight. And then also just did some high level follow-up from the retreat from October, which was also primarily focused on making sure that our milestones for this year were aligned with our actual priorities and what we are looking to accomplish this year. So just a lot of kind of alignment and moving forward with the strategic planning process. Emily. Dr. Albers. Governance.
First and foremost, look for some stuff in the room brief after break about the nomination committee, subcommittee, as we get ready for our newest election for board members. For our timeline that we've had for the past few years, that will start to get up and running. We'll be thinking about potential candidates. Obviously, if any of you have ideas, the nomination stuff will start to go out in the new year. So we'll talk about some of that at this point. My calculations have started to point towards that we need to have 2 parents elected this season, this election cycle. And then the third can be open to any type of member. So it could be a parent, but it could also be a teacher or a community member if we and still have a parent majority. So the third one is technically open. Currently though, we'd be replacing or re-electing 3 parents. So right now we sit at a 6 versus 3 majority. So that's the only difference there from this year. This year are Wandy, Kirsten, and you, Richard. So I've reached out to those who are up for re-election if they would like to move forward with re-election, but the nomination committee will talk about that and say more later. If you'd like to be part of the nomination committee, let me know. I know I've got a few board members already. I need 1 staff person and 1 parent. So other than that, we just have 4 policies tonight that are up for approval. The first one is 502, which is the search of student lockers, etc. policy. We have our annual review of the discipline policy ready to go. We looked at 807, which is the safe work environment policy, and then policy 603, which is development. So those 4 are up for approval tonight, and I would make a motion to approve 502, 506, 807, and 603.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All All right,
And
Director Miller. All right, discussion on any of the policies up for review?
Just to give a quick overview on each of these policies, 502. I gotta shout out Lori every single time we go through this because she's just so helpful in addition to the rest of the governance committee. Her access to MISBA is super helpful and her abilities to look at these things with the lawyer fine tooth comb is so helpful. There's not a lot that we did with 502. There was pretty good robust discussion around it. And we got some answers to that. But there was no significant changes that were really updated. There was one statute that needed to be updated, but nothing much in the policy has changed. Looking at 506, this is reviewed annually, like I mentioned. There's not a lot of change in here. There is a little bit of a note from the legislature, but it doesn't necessarily impact charter schools. So again, not a whole lot to be said about policy 506. So that's good. And then in 603, there were a few significant changes. You'll see it highlighted in yellow. What's new and what we're taking out is crossed out. Most of section 4 has been redone and added. So it talks about the advisory committee that charter schools have to have. We must establish an advisory committee to ensure active community participation. And then making sure that we have that committee in process. I'm already talking with Director Zane Benig and Frau Noy, who is our title data.
Dean of Data and Compliance.
Dean of Data and Compliance, thank you. And we are talking about the current curriculum advisory committee. We're talking about the CACR, which is the new version of World's Best Workforce, and how all of those things have kind of shifted and changed. So I'm in there as academic officer as well. So that's the majority of 603. They also added section 5. So a site team to develop and implement strategies and educational effectiveness practices. So there's always a good chunk coming out of MDE in the legislature. So, but those have been discussed in committee. And then the last one is, I went backwards, sorry, is 807, which did not have any major changes to it. So.
Real quick, is the 603 in the packet, the correct version? There's no section 4 or 5.
I have it on mine.
Yeah.
In the linked.
In the linked one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
got it.
We're still working on the fact that Lori is now outside of our
System.
organization. And so I have to go in and either approve or deny all of her comments. And when some of these are being heavily changed, those take some time to redo.
Got it.
Can I just ask why the or designee was taken out for 6.1 and 6.2?
What was the discussion on that?
I'm always going to be in favor of leaving that in because it's an or.
I don't know why we took that out, honestly. Jens, do you remember, or Ed? I know we talked about the second one in 6.2 of policy 603. If we need to, though, we can always amend the motion to keep that in. And then if
Just curious.
Want this to be on you.
Yeah, and like, it's all, I mean, so that's
Yeah.
fine, but I don't understand why we would just leave it in because it's
Yeah, I don't know.
or, right?
No.
And in the year like last year,
Right,
it would have been me as a principal.
Yeah.
Doing that work.
right.
So, but it reads shall be responsible, so that it doesn't from
Maybe that's what it was. Thank you.
from, yeah, you're still responsible
Yeah.
even if you have,
Keeping the board.
yeah,
Yeah. And then I
have
think
somebody
you'll
else work on it.
Yes, okay, yes, that's kind of jogging
Mhm.
and then.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think it's mostly based on the wording in these two sections. And then, but you can still designate other things to your team. Obviously, Esther has heavy involvement with
Mhm.
parts of this, so
Yeah.
we wouldn't just take,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
we wouldn't just take her out though. Thank you, Richard, for,
And, but it doesn't really work with 6.2, so I think we should maybe either leave in the or designee or add in the shall be responsible. So it reads the
for
same way.
6.2.
Yeah.
He is also kind of the same.
Because that way that reads, they have discretionary authority to develop guidelines. I guess maybe that's the same thing. You have the authority to develop. Yeah, it's probably fine because you have the authority to develop or have it developed.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
445, I think there's one too many line breaks.
Yeah.
How many what?
Line breaks.
The formatting, we don't need to approve technically, so I'm gonna let that slide.
Although I love the
Hi,
formatting
guys.
of this policy.
Yeah, I know, they're getting there. It's a lot of extras.
All right, any further discussion on the policies?
And this is no, that's a change, right? Never mind.
You good? All right, all those in favor of approving policies 603. Oh gosh, now I lost it. 807, 506, and 502. Say aye.
I
All those opposed say nay. All right, motion carries. Thank you, Director Albers.
Thank you.
All righty. Next up, executive committee, we did meet, I would say. I don't think the notes are in here.
I don't think we had a formal
I
meeting.
don't
We
think
just had a,
formal meeting either.
yeah, just a quick touch base.
So nothing new to report there. Brings us to liaison update.
I can start
All right.
with staff. The staff council held their first meeting. We do have a full staff council now. So it's it's been an exciting year. 2 of the 4 on the council are new, so it's exciting to see that other people are interested in providing their input, and it's always good to have fresh blood. I hesitated and I decided to go with it.
Beef wasn't gonna be better.
No, fresh faces is probably better. Fresh perspectives. The first staff council meeting was really just planning the next meetings throughout the year. So they are set and on calendars, which is good because then they can have timely communication ahead of them to have anybody bring anything to them that is needed. There was nothing brought to the staff council as of the first staff council meeting earlier this week.
Great. All right, we'll go down the line. parent liaison?
The parent council also had their first meeting after their elections. They spent most of the meeting assigning and deciding on who's gonna be the new co-chairs and alignment on the different positions on their leadership team. It was a very good meeting. Their fresh perspectives were was welcome. Couldn't resist either. So the co-chairs are gonna be David Moore and Jenny Linder. One of the things that I found valuable was there was a lot of discussion about what is the difference between parent council and PTO? And in their own discussion, it was discussed that the PTO is more of a nonprofit. They fundraise, they support teachers in the classroom with supplies and different things. Whereas the parent council is based on a driven model, purely an advisory role, and it advises the school on issues that the parents bring up. It's not going to give feedback on specific teachers, but on grade level issues that they're seeing or more systemic things that need to be improved or solved. So I thought it was a really great discussion. Their major next step that they're working on is forming and updating their new charter. And so they are going to collaborate with us, the board members, in developing that and figure out what that partnership looks like going forward as they develop the new charter for the parent council. So overall, good meeting.
That's great. A lot of positive progress.
Yeah.
Thank you. Emily, academic officer updates.
Yeah, we had a SEAC meeting. I don't know if the communication, Andrew and I were trying to figure that out, if the communication wasn't in the room brief or what happened, but it was a very small meeting. We talked about the staffing updates, a lot of what kind of was on tonight's agenda as well. And then it kind of shifted to the parent that was there asking a few questions more specifically about their case. So obviously, going back to the discussion from Andrew's presentation, that's also a place for special education families, students on IEPs to, voice concerns, talk to Andrew. Obviously, if there's more parents in the meeting than just one, that can get a little iffy if you want to talk about your family in a public forum, but it is a place for questions that are maybe more broader that other families might have, but haven't thought of or had the chance to ask to get answered in that forum. So yeah, there's not a whole lot to update on, but the next SEAC meeting is in January. And then we also had the Curriculum Advisory Committee meeting this week. It's been a lot of meetings this week. And Esther's rocking it with those PowerPoints, slideshows. They're so great. She's got feedback from those that were at the meeting. We talked about the fact that, again, World's Best Workforce is kind of turning into the CACR, which is, I can't remember what it stands for off the top of my head right now. And then we gave feedback on that, and she mentioned the meetings, which I'll mention again here for those listening online and those who are in person as well, that there is a meeting next Monday and I believe next Tuesday to put in feedback for the newest area goal that is being given out because of the CACR being a new thing. The goal is preparing students to be lifelong learners, and it's very broad for many a reason, but Esther would like to see, Brownaway would like to see what kind of feedback she can solicit on where that is going, or what kind of focus we want to have and what kind of goals do we want to have for that area of the report, since it is required. So some of it included service learning questions, if we should be offering that to students. Yeah, so if you're interested,
Comprehensive achievement and civic readiness.
I knew there was civic
And
in
the
there.
questions, Esther and I work on this together. She has the world's best workforce and then we combine for the CACR. So I'll be at those two.
Yes, you will.
And it's just a great opportunity to solicit feedback from families. The questions are geared towards the civic readiness, talking about volunteering options. We want to hear what cool things parents did when they were younger to build up their civic readiness, what other programs are out there at other schools, just to see what direction TCJS wants to go with.
So
Thanks
those
for being
meetings.
there on Tuesday.
Yeah, no, it was a good meeting, and like I said, those slideshows are very helpful where we stop and we think about each goal area and write our input and our feedback into that Google form as we go. So each thing is kind of fresh. We get to still discuss each of the questions that or the areas that we all might be interested in or want more information on in relation to the goals that we already have. And yeah, I highly recommend. And so if you're around for parent conferences on Monday evening, there's a meeting here in room 100 for families to join and give that input. And then as well on Tuesday.
7:15 on Monday.
Yes.
And then 2 to 3 on Tuesday.
Correct. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that everything?
That's, I think that's all the
A lot.
committee reports.
Excellent. Thank you. I can give a quick update on as administrative liaison. Elizabeth and I continue to meet every Tuesday and we just kind of do a quick rundown. We have a standing agenda of just checking in about facilities, fundraising, operations, finance. Every week it's slightly different, but it's just a good chance to have robust conversation and to just share a little time of thought leadership and bouncing ideas off each other for various issues of the day. So I appreciate that time together, and it's Director Hyde's been joining us for some of the financial discussions as well. So appreciate his taking the extra time to hop on those calls. But
Highlight of my week.
good break in the day. So nothing crazy to report other than just kind of business as usual. All right, that brings us to new business. Do we have any new business to discuss this evening? Hasn't already been touched on. All right. Well, hearing no new business to address, I will adjourn this meeting. The next time we will meet feels like a long time from now, January 30th, 2025. So, thanks for
Thank
being
you,
here
Gavel.
and for everybody's participation. And with that, this meeting is adjourned at 8:49.
That's crazy about that one.